On March 22, 1943, over Guadalcanal's Henderson field, maintenance crews recorded an unusual order. Paint simulated battle damage on operational P-40 Warhawks. The 347th Fighter Group had lost 14 aircraft in 3 weeks, attrition rates climbing faster than replacement schedules allowed. Intelligence reports suggested Japanese pilots prioritized damaged aircraft, assuming easier kills. What began as improvisation would alter tactical doctrine across the Pacific. By month's end, squadron records would document 40 confirmed enemy kills against projected losses of 8. The painted deception worked not through complexity, but through exploiting documented enemy engagement patterns. In hindsight, the tactic represented something broader: American adaptability translating industrial imagination into aerial advantage. The war files note it simply: cosmetic damage application, effective. But mechanics who applied the paint understood the stakes differently. Every fake bullet hole bought someone time. Lieutenant John Matthews arrived at Henderson Field on March 18, 1943, assigned to the 347th Fighter Group's 339th Fighter Squadron. His personnel file listed 127 flight hours in the P-40 Warhawk, adequate but unremarkable for combat deployment. The airstrip stretched across scraped coral and volcanic soil, carved from jungle by CB battalions 4 months earlier. Heat rose in visible waves from the runway at midday. Matthews's squadron operated 12 P-40Es, each requiring 4 hours of maintenance for every flight hour logged. Fuel arrived by coastal freighter twice weekly when sea lanes permitted. Spare parts followed no reliable schedule. By late March, operational aircraft availability hovered near 60%, below theatre requirements. Matthews spent his first days learning the base rhythm, pre-flight checks before dawn, missions at first light, debriefing by noon, maintenance through afternoon heat. The routine felt mechanical until Sergeant William Higgins approached him on March 21st with an oil-stained maintenance log and an unusual question about paint. Higgins commanded the squadron's ground crew, 11 enlisted men responsible for keeping 12 fighters airworthy. His service record included 2 years at Wright Field before the war, testing experimental camouflage schemes. On March 20th, he had received a memo from Group Intelligence. Japanese fighter pilots demonstrated measurable hesitation when engaging visibly damaged aircraft, preferring intact targets. The memo cited intercepted radio communications and gun camera analysis from recent engagements. Higgins proposed a field trial: apply cosmetic damage to operational aircraft using paint and careful weathering. The fake damage would suggest recent combat hits: bullet holes through non-critical surfaces, scorching near exhaust ports, panel discoloration. Matthews reviewed the proposal that evening, skeptical but intrigued. Resources were minimal: standard camouflage, paint, brushes, stencils improvised from tin sheeting. Labor would come from off-duty hours. Risk assessment was simple: if enemy pilots noticed the deception, engagement patterns would revert to normal. If they didn't notice, the squadron gained tactical initiative. Group Command approved the trial on March 21st. Application would begin immediately. The first aircraft received its cosmetic treatment on March 22nd. Higgins selected Matthews' P-40E, tail number 135, for the initial application. The process required 3 hours. Crew Chief Corporal James Dietrich used a small brush to paint irregular dark circles on the fuselage, simulating 7.7mm bullet entry points. Each mark was sized and positioned based on actual combat damage reports from the squadron's February engagements. Around the exhaust stacks, Higgins applied diluted black paint to suggest heat stress and minor fire damage. On the starboard wing, Dietrich added 3 simulated holes near the aileron hinge, positioned where structural damage would appear serious but remain non-critical. The effect, viewed from 50 yards, closely resembled battleware. Matthews inspected the work that afternoon, running his hand across the painted marks. The texture remained smooth, paint alone, no actual penetration. Close inspection revealed the deception, but from combat distances, the illusion held. By March 24th, 6 aircraft carried similar treatments, each pattern unique to avoid obvious repetition. Ground crews worked efficiently, developing stencils and application techniques that reduced treatment time to 90 minutes per aircraft. The work occurred during maintenance windows, invisible to anyone not directly involved. No official documentation recorded the paint applications beyond Higgins's maintenance logs, which listed the work under cosmetic weathering, field standard. The first combat test came on March 28th. Intelligence reported an inbound Japanese strike. 12 Mitsubishi G4M bombers, escorted by 8 Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, bearing southeast toward Guadalcanal at 14,000 feet. The 339th Squadron scrambled 8 P-40Es at 08:47 hours, including 6 aircraft bearing the painted damage. Matthews flew as element leader in his marked P-40E. The interception occurred at 09:21 hours, 23 miles northwest of Henderson Field. Gun camera footage, later analyzed, showed Japanese Zero pilots engaging the 2 undamaged P-40s first, allowing Matthews and his marked element to achieve initial firing position uncontested. Matthews opened fire at 300 yards, striking the nearest Zero's engine, cowling with his 50 caliber machine guns. The enemy fighter rolled left, trailing smoke, descending rapidly. His wingman, Lieutenant Robert Carlson, engaged a second Zero attempting to break toward the bomber formation. The engagement lasted 9 minutes. When the squadron returned to Henderson Field at 1005 hours, they claimed 4 Zero fighters destroyed and 2 bombers damaged. The squadron lost no aircraft. Post-mission analysis revealed engagement patterns differing from previous encounters. Normally, Japanese fighters intercepted attacking P-40s immediately, forcing defensive maneuvering that reduced American firing opportunities. This time, Zero pilots had delayed engagement by an estimated 15 seconds, enough time for Matthews' element to achieve advantageous position. Intelligence officers reviewed gun camera footage that afternoon, noting that all 4 destroyed Zeros had initially bypassed the marked P-40s to engage unmarked aircraft. The delay proved decisive. Higgins's maintenance log for March 28th recorded cosmetic damage application, tactically effective, recommend expansion. By March 30th, all 12 squadron P-40s carried painted battle damage. Group Command authorized similar treatment across all 4 squadrons in the 347th Fighter Group, 43 aircraft total. The paint cost nothing beyond existing supplies. The application time, approximately 80 man-hours across the squadron, represented a fraction of standard maintenance schedules. Return on investment, measured in enemy aircraft destroyed versus friendly losses, exceeded any previous tactical modification. The expanded program faced immediate challenges. Each aircraft required unique damage patterns to avoid obvious duplication if enemy pilots compared multiple aircraft. Higgins developed a reference system. Actual combat damage photographs served as templates, ensuring realistic placement and density. Bullet holes appeared in clusters near control surfaces, simulating strafing runs. Scorching patterns followed exhaust trails and ammunition bay locations. Panel discoloration suggested hydraulic leaks or fire suppression residue. The variations created a squadron of aircraft that appeared operationally degraded while remaining fully mission capable. Enemy intelligence, if analyzing American formations from distance, would see a fighter group showing heavy wear, exactly the impression Higgins intended. April brought intensified air operations across the Solomon Islands. The 347th Fighter Group flew 312 sorties during the month, encountering Japanese aircraft on 41 occasions. Matthews's squadron accounted for 104 of those sorties, with engagement rates climbing as enemy activity increased around Guadalcanal and neighboring Munda airfield. The painted damage tactic continued showing results. Between April 1st and April 15th, the 339th Squadron claimed 19 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed against one P-40 lost to ground fire. Engagement analysis revealed persistent patterns. Japanese fighters demonstrated measurable hesitation when attacking marked American aircraft, creating targeting windows that skilled pilots exploited. The effect wasn't absolute. Experienced enemy pilots engaged regardless of apparent damage, but aggregate statistics showed clear tactical advantage. Group intelligence estimated the painted deception added 12 to 18 seconds of engagement delay per encounter, translating to improved kill ratios and reduced American losses. The numbers convinced Theatre Command. On April 12th, 5th Air Force Headquarters issued Technical Order 43-118, Field Application of Simulated Combat Damage for Tactical Advantage. The order authorized all P-40 and P-38 squadrons in the South Pacific to adopt the paint scheme, provided applications didn't interfere with operational readiness or actual damage assessment. Matthews flew 14 combat missions in April, his flight time totaling 31 hours. Each mission followed similar patterns: pre-dawn briefing, takeoff at first light, interception or patrol, return by mid-morning. The missions blurred together: same altitude, same patrol sectors, same enemy formations approaching from the northwest. What varied was the outcome. On April 10th, Matthews engaged a formation of Valdive bombers north of Rendover Island, downing 2 before his ammunition ran dry. On April 15th, his element intercepted 8 Zeros near the Russell Islands, destroying 3 in a 15-minute engagement. On April 20th, he flew cover for a Navy destroyer group, encountering no enemy aircraft but logging 3 hours of patrol time. The constant tempo wore on everyone. Pilots flew every other day when aircraft availability allowed. Ground crews worked 12-hour shifts maintaining engines, patching actual combat damage, and reapplying the fake weathering when tropical rains washed away paint. The Japanese began adapting by mid-April. Intelligence reports from April 18th indicated enemy pilots received updated engagement protocols, likely responding to observed American tactics. Zero formations began attacking in coordinated pairs, reducing individual pilot discretion about target selection. The adaptation didn't eliminate the painted damage advantage, but it reduced effectiveness. Engagement delays shortened from 15 seconds to approximately 8 seconds on average. Matthews noticed the change during an April 22nd mission. His element intercepted 6 Zeros escorting a reconnaissance aircraft near Vangunu Island. The enemy fighters engaged immediately, ignoring the painted damage entirely. The resulting dogfight lasted 20 minutes, ending with 2 Zeros destroyed and 1 P-40 damaged. Better than early war engagement ratios, but not the decisive advantage gained in late March. Post-mission analysis suggested Japanese command had identified the American deception and adjusted tactics accordingly. The painted damage still provided marginal benefit, but pilots couldn't rely on it exclusively. Higgins modified the application technique in response. Starting April 24th, ground crews added fresh-looking damage over existing weathered marks, creating layered effects suggesting ongoing combat attrition. The newer marks implied aircraft returning from recent missions rather than carrying old damage. The modification restored some tactical effectiveness, though never matching the initial surprise advantage. Squadron morale remained steady despite increased combat intensity. Matthews observed his fellow pilots during the daily routine, pre-flight conversations, mission briefings, afternoon maintenance walks. No one discussed fear directly, but everyone understood the statistics. Monthly loss rates hovered near 12% across fighter squadrons in the South Pacific. Over 6 months, that attrition reduced squadron strength by half. Replacement pilots arrived intermittently, usually with fewer flight hours than combat requirements demanded. The situation created grim arithmetic. Every successful mission extended survival probability. Every tactical advantage mattered. The painted damage represented one variable in complex combat equations, not decisive alone, but contributing to cumulative odds. Matthews flew because the missions required flying. The painted marks on his fuselage were tools, nothing more. Whether they worked or didn't, the missions continued. By late April, the 339th Squadron had accumulated 40 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed since implementing the painted damage tactic. The number appeared in group intelligence summaries as a data point without commentary. 40 kills over 5 weeks, against 3 P-40s lost to enemy action and 2 to operational accidents. Pre-deception monthly averages had been 18 kills against 4 losses. The improvement was statistically significant, though attributing causation remained complex. American pilots were gaining experience, aircraft availability was improving, and Japanese pilot quality was declining as veteran aviators were lost faster than replacements trained. The painted damage contributed to favorable trends, but didn't singularly explain them. What the tactic demonstrated was broader principle. Small modifications in doctrine, applied consistently across operational units, accumulated into measurable advantage. Theatre Command took note. By April 30th, 17 fighter squadrons across the South Pacific had adopted simulated damage painting, covering approximately 190 aircraft. The practice spread through informal channels, pilots talking between squadrons, maintenance chiefs sharing techniques, intelligence officers comparing engagement statistics. No formal training program existed. The tactic propagated because it worked well enough, cost nothing, and required minimal time. Matthews flew his 30th combat mission on April 28th, intercepting a Japanese strike force targeting American shipping near New Georgia. His element engaged 4 Zeros at 13,000 feet, destroying one and damaging another before breaking off due to low fuel. The mission lasted 90 minutes gate to gate, with 14 minutes of actual combat. Returning to Henderson Field, Matthews noticed his P-40's engine running rough, cylinder head temperature climbing beyond normal range. He landed without incident, but post-flight inspection revealed a cracked cylinder requiring replacement. The aircraft would be non-operational for 4 days minimum, pending parts delivery. Higgins logged the damage and assigned Matthews to a different P-40E, tail number 142, freshly painted with simulated battle damage. The new aircraft felt nearly identical to his previous mount. Same engine response, same control weight, same slight left rudder trim requirement. Only the tail number and damage pattern differed. Matthews flew it the next day without issue. May opened with increased Japanese air activity. Intelligence reported a major enemy offensive planned for early May, targeting American positions across the Central Solomons. The 347th Fighter Group received orders to maximize sorties, prioritizing interception of bomber formations over fighter sweeps. Between May 1st and May 7th, Matthews's squadron flew 63 sorties, the highest weekly total since arriving at Guadalcanal. Operational tempo strained maintenance capabilities. Aircraft availability dropped to 58% as ground crews struggled to complete repairs between missions. The painted damage, previously applied during scheduled maintenance, became harder to maintain. Tropical rains washed away paint, actual combat damage, overlaid, simulated marks, and time constraints forced crews to prioritize mechanical repairs over cosmetic application. By May 5th, only 7 of the squadron's 12 P-40s retained clear, simulated damage patterns. The degradation coincided with intensified combat that reduced the tactic's effectiveness anyway. Japanese pilots, now fully aware of American deception techniques, engaged marked and unmarked aircraft equally. The painted damage still provided marginal psychological effect, but nothing approaching early advantages. The squadron's peak engagement occurred on May 6th. Intelligence reported an inbound strike of 18 G4M bombers escorted by 12 Zeros, targeting Henderson Field directly. The 347th Fighter Group scrambled every available aircraft, 31 P-40s and 6 P-38 Lightnings. Matthews led a 4-aircraft element intercepting the formation at 08:47 hours northeast of Guadalcanal. The engagement became chaotic immediately. 0 fighters dove through the American formation, forcing defensive breaks. Matthews locked onto a bomber, fired a 3-second burst and watched his tracers impact the starboard wing route. The G4M rolled right, trailing fire, and began a slow descent. Matthews didn't watch it crash. 2 Zeros were closing from his 7 o'clock. He broke hard left, pulling maximum G, vision narrowing as blood drained from his head. His wingman, Lieutenant Thomas Brennan, called out the enemy positions. Matthews reversed right, trying to shake the pursuit. 1 Zero overshot, exposing its underside. Matthews fired instinctively. Short burst, 30 rounds. The Zero shuddered and fell away. The May 6th engagement lasted 27 minutes. When surviving aircraft returned to Henderson Field, pilots reported 9 bombers destroyed, 5 Zeros confirmed, and 3 additional enemy aircraft probably destroyed. American losses were heavy. 4 P-40s shot down, 2 pilots killed, 1 P-38 damaged beyond repair. Matthews landed with fuel gauges reading empty, literally fumes remaining. His aircraft had taken 2 hits, one through the vertical stabilizer and another that creased the engine, cowling without penetrating. Ground crews counted 14 holes across returning aircraft, plus significant structural damage to 3 fighters requiring depot-level repair. The painted damage was no longer relevant. Real combat damage now marked every operational aircraft. Higgins's crews spent the afternoon patching holes, replacing damaged components, and assessing airworthiness. The simulated damage, where it still existed, disappeared beneath actual battle scars. Nobody bothered reapplying it. The tactical situation had evolved beyond the tactic's utility. Matthews attended the evening briefing exhausted, hands still shaking slightly from adrenaline after effects. The intelligence officer presented loss estimates. Japanese forces had lost approximately 13 aircraft over Guadalcanal that day, against 5 American fighters destroyed and 2 damaged, beyond immediate repair. The exchange ratio favored American forces, but the cost was mounting. Since April 1st, the 339th Squadron had lost 7 pilots, 4 killed in action, 2 missing, 1 medically evacuated. Replacement pilots arrived weekly, but averaged fewer flight hours than the men they replaced. Squadron cohesion depended increasingly on a shrinking core of experienced aviators. Matthews had accumulated 43 combat missions. His flight logbook recorded 178 total combat hours. The numbers placed him among squadron veterans, though he'd been at Guadalcanal only 7 weeks. Survival duration compressed in combat theatres. What peacetime training stretched across months, combat experience concentrated into weeks. Matthews understood the mathematics without dwelling on them. Each mission was discrete. Plan, execute, return. Aggregate probability didn't matter during individual engagements. What mattered was maintaining focus, following procedures, and trusting squadron mates to cover your six. The rest was statistics. The pace continued through mid-May. The 347th Fighter Group flew 42 sorties on May 9th, 38 on May 10th, and 47 on May 11th. Japanese air attacks decreased after May 7th, but patrol requirements remained constant. Matthews flew 8 missions between May 8th and May 14th, encountering enemy aircraft on 4 occasions. The engagements were brief, intercepting reconnaissance flights, harassing bomber formations, skirmishing with 0 escorts. No major battles developed. The painted damage tactic had effectively ended. Combat operations now involved aircraft bearing genuine battle damage, hastily patched, and returned to service. What paint remained on fuselages was standard camouflage, weathered by salt spray and tropical sun. The simulated bullet holes and scorching had served their purpose, buying time and advantage during a critical period when American forces built strength and Japanese forces overextended. By mid-May, the tactical balance had shifted enough that deception mattered less than straightforward combat capability. Group Intelligence produced a summary report on May 15th, analyzing the painted damage program's effectiveness. The document, classified confidential, circulated to squadron commanders and theatre staff. Key findings. Between March 22 and May 10th, squadrons employing simulated damage showed a 19% improvement in kill-to-loss ratios compared to control squadrons without the tactic. The effect diminished over time as enemy pilots adapted, dropping to 8% by late April and becoming statistically insignificant by early May. Total program cost was estimated at 340 man-hours for application and maintenance across 17 squadrons, negligible compared to standard maintenance requirements. Tactical recommendation: continue simulated damage application during periods when enemy forces might not have encountered the deception, new theatres, new enemy units, or after operational pauses. Discontinue in established combat zones where enemy adaptation had neutralized effectiveness. The report concluded, simulated damage represents low-cost, high-return tactical innovation applicable in specific circumstances. Effectiveness depends on enemy unfamiliarity and operational surprise. Duration of advantage, approximately 4 to 6 weeks before enemy countermeasures develop. Matthews read the report summary during a rare afternoon off duty. The conclusions matched his experience. The painted damage had worked until it didn't, providing advantage during a window of enemy unfamiliarity. The tactic's end wasn't failure. It had achieved what asymmetric tactical innovations typically achieved. Temporary advantage exploited until the enemy adapted. The value lay not in permanent superiority but in forcing enemy response, consuming enemy attention and resources, and buying time for other advantages to develop. American industrial production was accelerating. More fighters, better models, improved logistics. The Pacific War was becoming an attrition contest, and American replacement rates exceeded Japanese capacity. Short-term tactical innovations like painted damage helped bridge gaps while strategic advantages matured. Matthews understood this intellectually, though his daily reality remained simpler. Fly missions, return safely, repeat. Strategic context mattered to commanders and historians. For pilots, what mattered was next mission's briefing. The squadron received new P-40N models on May 18th, replacing 3 worn P-40Es that had exceeded engine hour limits. The N model featured reduced weight and improved performance, faster climb rate, better high-altitude handling. Matthews flew his first N model sortie on May 20th, noting immediately the crisper control response and reduced torque effect. The aircraft felt livelier, more responsive to stick inputs. No simulated damage marked its factory-fresh camouflage. The paint schemes were standard theatre colours: olive drab upper surfaces, neutral grey undersides, white star insignia. Clean and unmarked. Matthews flew it twice more before the month ended. Both patrols without contact. The missions were routine: orbit assigned sectors, maintain radio watch, return at scheduled time. Combat flying contained surprisingly little drama most days. Hours of patrol interrupted occasionally by minutes of violence. The painted damage period had been unusual, not because combat occurred, but because tactical innovation briefly concentrated advantage. Now operations had returned to standard patterns: numerical superiority, grinding attrition, gradual advance. By late May, the 339th Squadron had completed 287 combat sorties since Matthews' arrival in March. The squadron claimed 63 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed and 26 probably destroyed, against 9 P-40s lost to enemy action and 4 to operational causes. 21 pilots had flown for the squadron during that period, 7 killed, 3 missing, 2 medically evacuated, 9 rotated to other assignments or training duties. Current roster strength was 14 pilots, with 2 pending arrival from replacement depots. The numbers documented typical fighter squadron experience in the South Pacific during mid-1943. High operational tempo, steady attrition, continuous personnel turnover. The painted damage tactic had influenced those statistics, particularly during April, when kill ratios improved markedly. How much influence was debatable. Combat effectiveness derived from multiple factors: pilot skill, aircraft performance, tactical doctrine, numerical advantage, enemy capabilities. The simulated damage was one variable among many. Its contribution was real, but not decisive. What the tactic demonstrated was something broader than tactical innovation. It showed that small modifications, cheaply implemented, could alter combat outcomes during specific windows. It validated a principle that would inform military doctrine afterward. Asymmetric advantage need not be permanent to be valuable. Temporary edge, properly exploited, changed situations enough that permanent advantages could develop. Matthews flew his final mission of May on May 29th, escorting a Navy PBY Catalina, conducting maritime reconnaissance near Vella La Vella. The mission was uneventful. 4 hours of patrol, no enemy contact, returned to Henderson Field by 1400 hours. He logged the flight in his personal records. Mission 48, flight time 4.2 hours, no engagement. The routine continued. June would bring new operations, new targets, new tactical challenges. The painted damage would not return. It belonged to March and April, a brief period when deception worked and advantage emerged from imagination. Now the squadron flew standard operations relying on improved aircraft, growing experience, and numerical superiority. The war continued. Matthews would fly until rotated home or until he didn't return. That arithmetic applied to everyone. The painted marks were gone, but the missions remained. The 347th Fighter Group's operational summary for March through May documented 847 total sorties, 187 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed, and 31 American aircraft lost. The numbers entered official records without highlighting the painted damage period specifically. Theatre historians would later analyse those months, identifying the tactic as a minor but noteworthy innovation. Academic studies would debate its actual effectiveness versus coincidental factors. Statistical analyses would attempt to isolate the deception's impact from other variables: improved aircraft availability, pilot experience gains, declining Japanese pilot quality. No consensus would emerge about precise attribution. What remained undebatable was the attempt itself. Facing numerical disadvantage and higher performing enemy fighters, American forces had tried something unconventional. The tactic worked well enough, long enough, to matter during a critical period. Matthews received orders on June 4th for rotation to training duties stateside. His accumulated combat hours, 192 total, and mission count, 51 sorties, qualified him for instructor assignment. He would depart Guadalcanal on June 12th aboard a transport flight to Pearl Harbor, then continue to California. The rotation was standard procedure. Combat pilots served approximately 6 months in forward theatres before returning to train replacement personnel. The system maintained experience flow while preventing complete burnout. Matthews felt no particular emotion about the orders, relief, perhaps, mixed with guilt about leaving squadron mates. Everyone rotated eventually, if they survived. His turn had come. The painted P-40 he'd flown in March sat on the Henderson field tarmac now, scheduled for depot maintenance. Its simulated damage had long since disappeared beneath actual combat wear. The aircraft would remain in theatre, assigned to replacement pilots who would never know about the experiment. That continuity characterized combat operations. Individuals rotated, but units and equipment persisted. The innovations, the tactics, the lessons learned all remained embedded in operational practice, passed pilot to pilot through briefings and informal conversation. On June 11th, Matthews walked the Henderson field perimeter one final time, observing the routine he'd lived for 12 weeks. Aircraft sat lined on the coral strip, ground crews working underneath in the afternoon heat. Replacement pilots clustered near operations, receiving briefings from senior aviators. The scene was identical to March, but entirely different. More aircraft now, better models, more experience in squadron operations, better logistics. The painted damage had been part of that evolution, one small modification among dozens that collectively improved American combat effectiveness. Its contribution was real but modest, which was exactly what tactical innovation typically achieved. Modest improvement, compounded across units and time. Matthews boarded the transport the next morning. The flight lifted from Henderson Field at 8:20 hours, climbing through scattered clouds into clear Pacific sky. Below, the airstrip shrank to a thin line across green jungle. Within minutes, it disappeared entirely. The painted aircraft, the missions, the brief period of tactical deception all remained behind, entering the documented record as 3 paragraphs in a classified intelligence summary and a footnote in operational histories. The war continued, the innovations continued, and somewhere another squadron was trying something new. Theatre Command declassified the simulated damage report in August 1943, distributing it to training commands and tactical development groups. The document received limited circulation. 50 copies, restricted to command staff and instructors. Its conclusions entered the informal knowledge base that informed pilot training and tactical instruction. Paint your aircraft to appear damaged never became formal doctrine, but the principle it represented did. Tactical deception, cheaply implemented, could influence enemy behavior. That principle would reappear in various forms throughout the war. dummy installations, false radio traffic, deceptive lighting patterns. The painted P-40s were early examples of a broader pattern, using limited resources imaginatively to create disproportionate effects. The tactic's short effectiveness window didn't diminish its value. It had worked when needed, during a period when American forces were building strength while managing resource constraints. By the time enemy forces adapted, other advantages had developed. Better aircraft arriving in greater numbers, improved logistics, growing pilot experience. The painted damage had bought time. That was enough. Matthews began instructor duties at Foster Field, Texas, in July 1943. He taught advanced combat tactics to newly trained pilots, drawing on his Pacific experience. The painted damage story came up occasionally during informal instruction. "We tried something different," he'd explain. "Worked for a while, then didn't, but it made a difference when it mattered." The lesson wasn't about the specific tactic, it was about willingness to experiment, to try unconventional approaches when conventional methods weren't sufficient. That mindset, more than any single innovation, characterized effective combat forces. Matthews would train pilots through 1944, then return to civilian life in January 1945. His service record documented 51 combat missions, 192 combat hours, and participation in engagements resulting in 4 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed. The painted P-40 he'd flown never appeared in his records. It was maintenance detail, not combat achievement. But the experience stayed with him, the recognition that sometimes small changes mattered more than grand strategies. Sergeant Higgins remained at Guadalcanal through September 1943, maintaining the squadron's aircraft as operations continued. The painted damage never returned to common use in his squadron, though he noted other units trying similar deceptions periodically. The tactic would reappear occasionally throughout the war, usually when new units faced unfamiliar enemies or when tactical situations created opportunity for exploitation. It never again achieved the success of those first weeks in March and April 1943. But it didn't need to. Military innovation wasn't about permanent advantage, it was about continuous adaptation, trying new approaches, discarding what didn't work, and refining what did. The painted damage represented one iteration in that continuous cycle. Higgins received a Bronze Star in October 1943 for his maintenance contributions, though the citation didn't mention the simulated damage program specifically. He rotated to a depot maintenance facility in Australia in November, where he would serve until war's end. The painted P-40s remained a brief chapter in his service, memorable but not definitive.